Namaste, dear ones. Welcome to Satsang to Awaken. I am Nilanjana Krishnan. Today's topic of exploration is Spirituality of Science. How to apply universal law to understand all systems, meet day-to-day challenges, and make wise choices. May sound like a mouthful, but I've done the best I can to make this topic relatively easy to understand. I have quoted many real-time examples that you can relate to. So, why am I drawn to this subject? Over the past months, just like many of you, I too have had to sift through a whole host of new information related to the pandemic-like situation and make sense of it. I have been using many tools, spiritual and otherwise, to help me guide my choices that would be best for me and my family in this prevailing situation. Along the way, I came across one such tool, a basic systems theory as taught by one Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. He has done extensive research and study over the course of decades and has shown that whatever is going on in our world today, be it in politics, healthcare, education, or in any other field, including the handling of this, what we have been calling a pandemic, can all be explained using a systems approach. I felt inspired to expand this learning tool to include the overarching layer of the universal law to further describe and understand all systems. Over the years, as has been taught in our scriptures, I have come to acknowledge the spirit of oneness in all beings, whether animate or inanimate, and that all truths reside within you. We owe our existence to Source Energy and Creator that contain or hold this universal law or universal intelligence. I started writing an article on this topic, tying the idea of universal law to a systems approach and how this can be used to solve problems or answer pressing questions to help discern and make the right choices. I later reckoned that I could share my learning and observations as a presentation. So, here I am. And before I begin, if you wish to learn more about Dr. Shiva's work and training programs, please visit vashiva.com. I have linked it in the description box. Now, let me go ahead and start the presentation. We all know that there is a universal law that governs every aspect of life. Therefore, if we understand this law, then we can understand every aspect of life. Universal law neither changes nor lies. Therefore, it can safely be assumed that anything which corresponds with universal law must also correspond with truth. To understand anything such as how a clock, your immune system, or toaster work, it is key to understand the one thing that is common across all these systems, for isn't that one common thing also universal? So, what is that one thing? Hint, hint, I just said the word a moment ago. If you guessed it right, yes, it is system. All of these, the clock, your immune functions, the toaster, they are each a system. A system, in simple words, is nothing but a collection of individual parts or components that work together through an intelligent network of interconnections according to the intended design. Without these intelligent interconnections, a system will not be. The key is intelligence. No intelligence, no system. No system, no existence. What then are the many manifestations of intelligence in all systems? They are, number 1, the element life force, and number 2, the converted elemental forces. In live animated creations, such as humans, animals, plants, and other microorganisms like bacteria, virus, and fungi, the intelligence is known as life force, which is prana and breath. It is this life force which in turn enables the network of interconnections within the humans, animals, plants, and microorganisms to function as per intended design. In the inanimate objects such as clock, toaster, light bulb, car, etc., the intelligence is manifested through the converted forms of the basic elemental forces such as electricity, mechanics, chemical reactions, electromagnetism, hydraulics, nuclear, and others. As you can well see that the idea of systems per se is universal. Still unsure? Look around. The room in which you are sitting is a system. The device you are using to watch this is a system. The tea you are sipping is a system. Done looking outside? Look within. Your circulatory system, digestive system, metabolic functions, voluntary movement of limbs, your idea for a new project, feeling of love in your heart, etc., are all systems based on universality or universal intelligence. As you can see, one needs to understand the whole picture in order to understand what any system truly is, be it your body, your thoughts, a device, or the Milky Way galaxy. So, what then is the universal law that governs all of life and life's many systems? What is it that informs us of the truth of things and of life? I believe that Sanatan Dharma can lead us to the answers. Sanatan Dharma is a Sanskrit term which means the natural law of how to live or the eternal way of life. Although Sanatan Dharma's birthplace is ancient India, it is universally applicable across all clime, time, cultures, ethnicities, and religions. You will see how in the course of the presentation. Sanatan Dharma's 4 fundamental pillars are Satya-Truth, Dharma, duty or righteousness, Karma, action, Moksha, union with source. You may substitute the word source with any other as you prefer, such as divine or God or creator. Let's explore the first pillar. Satya, truth. Know the truth no matter whether you like it or not, and no matter how easy or difficult it is to face. The truth shall set you free. It is what it is. Accept what is, as is. Let's explore the second pillar. Dharma, duty or righteousness. You do not need books or anybody outside of you to tell you what is right or wrong. You know right or wrong by instinct. Never go against your own intuition and inner voice. What works for you may not for another. One size does not fit all. Be true to your higher self. Let's explore the third pillar. Karma, action. As you sow, so you reap. What goes around comes around. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Law of cause and effect. Action with no attachment to results. Let's explore the fourth and last pillar. Moksha, union with source. Ultimate goal of all life. Self-realization, attunement with the source of all creation, embodiment of the grandest version of you that can ever be, perfect alignment. So, how can a clock, a galaxy, a toaster, human immune system, photosynthesis, and all other systems be described using the foundations of Sanatan Dharma? Let us begin with the clock, an animate, non-living system, and apply the 4 pillars. Satya, must accept the truth of the time shown. It does not want it to be 11 a.m. when it is in reality 10 a.m. Dharma. It must show correct time. The hour, minute, and seconds hands are coded to move at specified rates and in sync with one another to ensure correct time is indicated. Karma must act or function in accordance with the rate of movement of the hour, minute, and seconds hands. If they go slow or fast, it will show incorrect time. The health of the battery is important. If it dies, the clock will stand still until fixed. Moksha. It is to epitomize or be the perfect model of a clock, to indicate correct time every time, hence be in perfect alignment as per intended design, and be the highest version of clock it's meant to be until its body or physical part cease to exist or function. Next we go on to the human immune system, an animate living system, and apply the 4 pillars here also. Satya. It is to accept its current health and ability to provide immunity, whether good or poor. Dharma. To provide optimum immune support against any and all pathogens, bacteria and viruses. All parts of the immune system, innate, adaptive, interferon, virome and microbiome, work in sync with each other and support one another in the most optimal ways. Karma. To function in accordance with the health and ability of each of its various components. The stronger and optimal each component, the better the immune function. The converse being true also. That is, weaker the constituents of the immune system, weaker the immune function. Moksha. To be the perfect model of immune system there can be until the physical components cease to function at the time of death, when life force leaves the human and hence the immune system. How about one more? Photosynthesis, another animate living system, and we will apply the 4 pillars here. Satya. Its truth is to accept that life, directly of plants and indirectly of humans and animals on earth, depends on the ability of the plant to synthesize carbon dioxide and water and to release oxygen and store energy within glucose molecules. Dharma is to optimally perform its functions in order to effectively synthesize carbon dioxide and water and to release optimal levels of oxygen and store the appropriate quanta of energy within glucose molecules. Karma. It is to function in accordance with the health and ability of each of its various constituents. The stronger the roots, the better the absorption of water. The more efficient the chlorophyll, the better the light-absorbing capability of the plant. The converse is also true in both cases. That is, the weaker the roots and less efficient the chlorophyll, poorer will be the photosynthesis. Moksha is to be the highest and most efficiently functioning model of photosynthesis there can be, until the physical constituents cease to function at the time of death, when life force withdraws from the plant. Okay, you must wonder how the feeling of love can be explained with this model, at least I did. Therefore, here you go. Feeling of love in your heart, an animate living system, and applying the 4 pillars here also. Satya. Accept that feeling of love in its completeness. You do not expect anything more or less or different from what is. That feeling of love is what is. Period. Dharma. Being true to and acknowledging the feeling of love in the moment. It is the highest duty to feel the love completely in its truest essence. Karma. Whatever the feelings of love felt for another is what is also returned. As you sow love, so you reap love. Harboring no attachments to the outcome though. Moksha. To feel the love as divinely as possible. That is the highest version of love it can ever be. So, now that we have covered the workings of a wide range of systems based on universal law as explained using the 4 pillars of Sanatan Dharma, we can briefly touch upon why people spend considerable time and resources with the study of individual components but less with systems as a whole. Before we do that, it may be useful to understand what reductionism and holism are. This is their simplified dictionary meaning. Reductionism is a practice of studying and analyzing the individual components or parts of a whole and entire system. For example, if you are wearing a shirt, look at the button, sleeve, collar, all separately. That's the reductionistic view. Okay? Next. Holism is a practice of studying and analyzing the whole and entire system. In the shirt example just mentioned, look at the whole shirt, taking in all parts, buttons, sleeves, collars, etc. at the same time. That is a systems view. So, is one better than the other? Well, it depends upon the situation at hand. Let us keep this question in mind and come back to why people spend considerable time and resources with the study of individual components but less with systems as a whole. I believe that it is a direct result of our education system that breaks down subject matter into its individual components and assigns students to specialized teaching faculty, who, although having deep understanding of individual components, are not as knowledgeable about the interactions amongst them within the larger scope of a system. An example in our current society that exemplifies this is the interactions and influences that the lobbyists and major corporations exert on our political system. Considerable time is spent in schools and colleges learning about economics, political science, and governments, but not much on how one influences the other and how their interactions and interconnections can direct the course of events. Even less time is spent in teaching students how to use the knowledge of such interconnections in helping solve day-to-day problems of society. Other instances where the reductionistic approach is popular is when you publish a research paper, or you conduct a study or experiment, or when subject matter experts address or lecture a focused audience. In these instances, a thorough understanding about the design, construction, and detailed workings of these individual components becomes imperative. Although we know that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, yet the parts are integral to the whole system. Therefore, learning about the individual parts becomes necessary. So now, in order to understand how these individual parts contribute to the working of the overall system, learning about the entire system becomes most important of all. How they work individually is called a reductionist model of study, and how they work together in sync with one another on a more holistic level is termed system study. Hence, remember that systems are always whole and complete. Otherwise, you wouldn't call them systems, would you? The reductionist versus holistic approaches of study can be applied to all systems. Let us consider three major systems impacting our lives today. They are healthcare, politics, and economics. Let's start with healthcare. The basic components of a typical healthcare system are patients, doctors, hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, health insurance providers. Next, the basic components of a typical political system are citizens, political parties, central federal government, state government, lobbyists. Lastly, the basic components of a typical economic system are customers, businesses, tax collectors, IRS, central federal state governments, banks. In these three examples, you can study the functions and scope of the individual components within each system as in a reductionistic model. but when considered together as a network of interconnections within the system, as in a holistic model, they paint a whole other picture. For the purpose of this presentation, let's consider only the healthcare system and examine the reductionist as well as the system approaches. Let us begin with reductionism. We know the characteristics that make up a typical patient. They are unwell with mild, medium, or seriously disturbed health condition. Similarly, we know what the functions of a typical doctor are, one who diagnoses and treats their patients. Next, the characteristics of a typical hospital. They employ doctors, nurses, specialists, surgeons, have diagnostic laboratories and an ER team. They treat inpatients and outpatients. A typical pharmaceutical company manufactures medical drugs and vaccines. Lastly, in our model is the typical health insurance provider who sells insurance policies to the individual and corporations so that their clients can use the available funds towards their medical treatments. In a reductionistic view, without any interconnections amongst these individual parts, not much can be understood about this system. There isn't a story to tell except theoretically learning about each constituent and its typical functions. Now, let us look at the whole system of healthcare and the story they tell. The patient's overall well-being and correct diagnosis is determined by their own correct expression of symptoms, combined with the expertise of the doctor and the efficacy of the prescribed drug and/or treatment protocol. The prescribed drug bought by the doctor's clinic or hospital in turn can work properly only if it has been thoroughly tested for its effectiveness and safety. However, if the patient reacts adversely with side effects, then it can create a bad name for the doctor, hospital, and pharma company, and perhaps invite legal disputes. Then jurisprudence may become a part of the system. And of course, the hospital can receive its dues for treating their patient only if the patient or insurance provider pay up in a timely fashion. In these relatively straightforward instances, we can see how the efficiency of the overall healthcare system is dependent not only on the optimum functioning of its individual parts, but also the intelligent network of interconnections amongst them. As you can very well see, there are bound to be external and internal challenges or disturbances that can occur at the site of one or more components. That is at a reductionistic level, or to the systems as a whole, that is at a systems level. In the example of the healthcare system, disturbances can occur to the individual components such as the patient losing insurance coverage due to loss of employment and is therefore unable to afford the expensive surgery. A new vaccine or drug may have serious side effects not evaluated by the pharmaceutical company. A patient's incorrect records filing within the hospital can misinform the doctor about the current status of their patient's health. Similarly, a disturbance or challenge may occur to the whole system, such as a pandemic, causing fear and stress in a majority of the population, hence resulting in lowered immunity and susceptibility to illnesses, loss of employment, and changes in hospital and insurance policies, just to name a few. An economic downturn may result in loss of employment, hence loss of health insurance coverage and reduced salaries. If a nation is at war, then it can cause political unrest and redeployment of resources such as money and manpower. The 4 pillars of Sanatan Dharma can also be applied to the healthcare system, as we have done before with other animate and inanimate systems. Remember the examples of clock, immune function, photosynthesis, and feeling of love? I'm not going into the details here, but you do get the idea how the law can be universally applied across any and all systems. How effective efficient and optimal a system is can be determined by how the components are intelligently interconnected and how they are equipped to deal with the internal and external disturbances. Based on the type of intelligence animating a system, we can arrive at two ways that systems operate. The first one is by default. This is also known as an open loop system where there is an input and then a series of operations take place in the components followed by an output. Examples of such systems are clock, faucet, remote control and toaster. You press a button, the TV turns on. You push down the knob, the bread is toasted in minutes. A straightforward and one-way type of operation. Here, the output is dependent upon the input, but the input is independent of the output. A good example to illustrate this is the faucet. You open the faucet, which is input, and out flows water, the output. The flowing water, output, has no influence on the opening or shutting of the faucet, input. Simple? Yes? When viewed within the context of individuals like you and me, this operating default can be equated to untapped intelligence. In such a case, your action, that is output, is dependent on the instruction given, which is input, whereas your action, that is output, has no influence on the instruction given, which is input. A good example would be doing as you are told to without questioning anything or anybody. In other words, this can look like following of rules even if it is not for your highest good, following status quo no matter what, blindly following orders, exercising no power or will to change the adverse course of events, and thinking that you have no freedom to act on your own principles. The second way that a system operates is consciously. This is also known as a closed loop system with feedback. Here, a goal that is set is fed into the input via a controller, and then a series of operations take place in the components, followed by an output that feeds back to the controller via a sensor. The controller controls the input. The output is compared to the goal via the sensor. If it is equal to the goal, then no change is required to be made. Otherwise, necessary changes need to be made as many times as needed via the controller until the output equals the goal. Examples of such systems are the thermostat, automobile, and electric iron. As you can see, the difference here is that the output controls the applied input. A good example to illustrate this is the thermostat, which is set to say 65 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the input with goal, and the system adjusts with feedback and successive input changes to maintain the intended temperature, which is the output. In the context of individuals like you and me, operating consciously can be equated to tapped or realized intelligence. Here, your outcome, that is output, is compared with the goal or intention via your senses, that is the sensor, and suitable adjustment is made as many times as needed via your mind, which is the controller, and your action, which is input, is suitably altered until your outcome, that is output, matches the goal or intention. A good example would be someone who sets a goal of earning, say, 11K in 3 months and achieves it through planning, commitment, and perseverance. In other words, this can also look like persons weighing the pros and cons of an instruction or command before taking action. Also, those taking a stand for truth, serving as change agents to bring about positive shifts in societies, and devising strategies to overcome internal and or external disturbances and challenges coming in the way of their goal. So, all the systems illustrated thus far are relatively simple ones, but in reality, these and other systems often have multiple inputs, multiple outputs, and a vast network of interconnections, and therefore are extremely complex in nature. Let us reserve those for a master's or doctoral level discussion, shall we? Well, we have explored the universality of all systems, even though they are each strikingly different in their individual functions and purpose. This understanding helps us to appreciate and acknowledge the oldest message proponed by messiahs and in spiritual texts, which is, we are all one. We are each a unique embodiment of the one universal intelligence animating us, whether we are human, plant, animal, or an inanimate object. It is the same intelligence in its many manifestations governing any and all systems, no matter what you call it, life force, prana, breath, electrical, mechanical, hydraulic, nuclear, or whatever else. What then is the purpose of learning about the universality of systems, the fundamental pillars that govern all of life, the truth of all beings and things, and the essential oneness of all? How can this knowledge help us in our daily lives? Now, just imagine how you feel and respond when life happens as per your wishes and plans. Then imagine how you feel and respond when life happens not in accordance with your wishes and plans. Why and how did your life play out like a well-orchestrated symphony in one case, and then why and how did it play out jarring and badly tuned in the other? What were the main differences in the two experiences? Would you say that in the first instance the system was well-oiled and its many components worked synchronously and harmoniously, producing the intended result? Then would you say that in the second instance the system had a fault in one or more of its constituents, or there was an external disturbance or challenge encountered, hence causing one or more hiccups in the system? As you can see, if you have a knowledge of the fundamental guiding principles of how systems work optimally, then you can understand, diagnose, and course correct what you wish in your own life, in that of another, and also in your world around. The universal law could be your greatest ally and guiding light on this journey. Perhaps you'd like to call it Sanatan Dharma or something else. It doesn't matter. If any system adversely affects your life or that of another or of your world around, then it may serve your best interest to do something about it. These fundamental pillars could serve as a yardstick to help you understand, compare, and contrast, so that you may finally, after making suitable alterations, arrive at your intended goal and be free from those adverse circumstances. The universal law can serve as a tool to help you learn the truth of life and of events occurring in the world around you. Separate truth from propaganda. Discern free speech amid rampant censorship. Be empowered as a lawful individual instead of giving power away to establishments and global elites. Remain empowered with truth and not be enslaved with manipulation. Bring greater long-term benefit to all versus short-term gains for a few. This is just a small sample. Universal law can help you in all aspects of life if you will use it. If you have eyes to see and ears to hear, I don't just mean the physical ones. It will be quite evident to you that as you control the perception of the masses using pre-designed narratives, you can control their behavior and reactions as well. I repeat, as you control the perception of the masses using pre-designed narratives, you can control their behavior and reactions as well. Therefore, it is fundamental for you to be consciously aware of which narratives you allow to fashion your perception, and also which persons and institutions you allow to educate and or influence you. I repeat, be consciously aware of which narratives you allow to fashion your perception, and also which persons and institutions you allow to educate and or influence you. You and I, on many occasions, have harbored confusion and doubt about what is true or which option serves the highest good, and so on. Therefore, when in doubt or when feeling uncertain about which direction to take and who to follow, you may ask yourself the questions as listed in the upcoming slides. If the response is a yes, then you may allow such information and people to inspire and guide you. If not, then do not feel obligated to acquiesce. The questions are rooted in the 4 pillars of Sanatan Dharma, the eternal universal law. And always remember, universal law governs every aspect of life. Universal law neither changes nor lies. Universal law corresponds with truth. Keep this knowing close to heart and let us move on. So here we go. If you have a certain person or agency in mind, you may record your responses as I read the questions. If not, of course, come back to this later on. The very first response that comes to mind is often the true response. Note your yes or no response right away. Let us begin with sample questions for the first pillar, Satya-Truth. Are they telling you what you need to know and not withholding, falsifying, or misrepresenting information? Are you receiving the whole truth and not just parts of them? Are they concerned more about sharing correct information with you even if their own reputation is at stake? Are they willing to accept and come clean when they are wrong about something? Do they inspire hope and faith? Are they oriented to solution consciousness and not simply harping on about the challenges and reasons to be afraid? Even when you are unsure about the message or the messenger, do you still feel a sense of resonance with truth? Now on to pillar number 2, Dharma, duty or righteousness. Are they ethical and holding themselves to high moral standards? Do they have nothing personal to gain or profit from sharing the information? Do they have much to lose but nothing to gain if they share the information? Are they being true to themselves rather than trying to please authorities? Do they acknowledge the individual needs and concerns of each person or groups of persons? Do you feel inspired and hopeful when you witness the way they speak, act, and engage with you? Do they empower you to make your own choices rather than imposing their will on you? Next, we move on to sample questions for pillar number 3, karma, action. Are they acting under oath? Are they using authority with an attitude of service? Do you feel that they are humble despite their position or authority? Do they demonstrate high standards through their actions? Do they use their power responsibly rather than forceful intimidation? Will they do their job even if there was no promised reward? Are they acting conscientiously? Do they hold themselves accountable for their actions? Finally, pillar number 4, Moksha, union with Source. Do they have high integrity? Do they consider the grand scheme of things before taking important decisions? Do their deeds match their words and promises? Have they never discriminated based on race, religion, social status, gender, and other factors? Are they centered within themselves and conduct themselves with grace and graciousness? Do they respond rather than react when challenged? Do they advocate for unity consciousness rather than create polarization among people? If you answered yes to all the above questions in all 4 slides, then yay, the person or agency in question has passed your test. You now have the necessary information to help guide your choices. If you are unsure about your responses to one or more of the above questions, then conduct your own research and uncover information from different sources. Do not limit yourself to mainstream channels such as the regular newspapers, television, radio, vested interest groups, etc., as they are heavily influenced by the powers that be. Explore alternative media, journalists, researchers, and other frontliners. Ally with truth seekers and truth speakers like yourself on this journey, and you can easily find them on social media, forums, and other neighborhood gatherings and focused interest groups. A great way indeed to meet the like-minded and the like-spirited folks. Anyway, these strategies will help you evaluate both sides of the coin, and you will start seeing the whole picture. Whole as in systems, remember? If you are still unclear or worried about the choices before you and you want to be absolutely sure about your latest revelations, then take some time out to practice stillness. Everybody finds their own haven of stillness, be it in meditation, visiting a place of worship, through chanting, by touching trees, communing with nature, hiking in the mountains, massaging your pet, or in any other spiritual practice or ritual that supports this process. In stillness, you can hear your own inner voice. Some call it God, Source, or Universe speaking to you. Guidance can come as whispers, gentle nudges, sudden flashes of insight, dreams, song lyrics, in articles you read or films you watch, and so on. If you pick it up, then make note of it and act soon before your ego or mental chatter talks you out of it. Be warned, they often do. So, it did get you, huh? If you did succumb to ego, don't beat yourself up. Go back to stillness yet again. Pose your query and then actively surrender to what must come in divine time. Go about business as usual, still tuned in to receiving messages from the higher realms. Return to stillness several times a day, even if for only a few minutes at a time. Let delays not upset or discourage you. If you have asked and actively surrendered, you will surely receive guidance. Make a commitment to follow your inner voice. Seek out the support of other like-minded and like-vibrational people to keep you on target. Fortune favors the brave. Take the guided action in faith, and as they say, jump and the net will appear. It is indeed so freeing to be able to apply proven tools to help yourself navigate through life and make day-to-day choices based on an inner conviction and resonance with truth, rather than getting influenced by those energies that wish to keep you stuck and hence dependent upon them for all your answers. This is so rampant in present times, with radically polarizing ideologies being propagated, such as pro versus anti, blue versus red, left versus right, liberals versus conservatives, black versus white, Republican versus Democrat, political correctness versus free speech, black lives versus all lives, and so on and so forth. Taking sides just for the sake of belonging to something or following a viewpoint just because it is the most popular or widely followed rarely offers any solution to existing problems. You must be an active participant in the game of your life and train yourself to discern and choose wisely. When you take a step forward in faith, the universe will start conspiring in your favor and support your intentions. You are now armed with some simple tools that you can use on this journey to understand the truth of you, of your life, of the numerous systems making up life in and around you, and of how your choices, when rooted in universal law, can positively impact your life experiences. Here are a few key inferences. Knowledge is power. And with power comes great responsibility. The wisdom of Spider-Man indeed. This can be extended a bit further to state that knowledge in the hands of the benefactor is power exercised responsibly. Change begins when people wake up to the truth of life within and around them and take the action steps to bring about the necessary shifts, thereby inspiring others to also awaken and join in the journey of bringing about a greater good for all. Finally, a few parting thoughts. Information and data alone are not intelligence. Knowledge alone is not wisdom. Belief is not the same as knowing. Realization is an absolute knowing of what is. Realization, your ultimate aha moment, is the irrefutable truth inside of you. Realized knowledge and realized intelligence is wisdom. May wisdom guide your way. Thank you for joining me. I consider myself a lifelong learner and would love to hear what you have to say. Please share your ideas and views on this subject. I look forward to connecting with you. Namaste.